Tanya lived in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of the city. Her house was small but cozy, with a little garden in front where flowers bloomed in the spring. She liked the calmness of her street. There were a few other houses, each with its own family, but it was never noisy. Most evenings, Tanya would sit on her porch with a cup of tea and watch the sun go down. The streetlights would flicker on one by one, and the neighborhood seemed to take a deep breath before the night fully arrived. She loved the peace and the rhythm of her life. Rex, her German shepherd, was always by her side. He was big, strong, and alert, but gentle with her. People in the neighborhood knew Rex. They would smile when he wagged his tail at them during their walks. He was more than a dog. He was a protector and a friend. Tanya had gotten him years ago from a shelter. He had been small and timid then, but under her care he grew into a loyal and courageous companion. They had a bond that was hard to explain. Rex understood her moods, her routines, and even her silences. Tanya worked during the day at a small local store. She liked her job because it gave her a chance to meet people, chat, and help those who came in. She was friendly but quiet, always polite and careful. She had lived in the neighborhood for many years and felt at home. But lately, there had been talk about some troublemakers in the city. A small gang had been breaking into houses in nearby areas. Most people in Tanya's neighborhood thought they were safe. But Tanya had a feeling she needed to stay alert. She couldn't explain why, but something in her gut told her to be careful. The gang was small, just 4 young men. They thought they could target anyone who seemed vulnerable. They were careless, arrogant, and worst of all, racist. They judged people by how they looked, and that gave them a false sense of confidence. They didn't know Tanya. They didn't know her strength or her courage. They didn't know Rex. That night, the gang was driving around looking for a house that seemed like an easy target. One of them had heard from a neighbor that a woman lived alone in a modest house and sometimes kept valuables at home. They saw her as someone they could easily intimidate, someone they thought would not fight back. Tanya, meanwhile, was having a quiet evening. She had cooked herself a simple dinner and was sitting in her living room reading a book. The lights in the house were soft and the smell of food lingered faintly. Rex lay near the door, ears perked slightly, listening to every sound. He had grown older but never lost his protective instincts. Tanya sipped her tea and glanced at him, smiling softly. "Good boy," she said, and Rex wagged his tail but didn't move. He stayed alert, as always. Outside, the gang parked their car a few houses down. They whispered to each other, laughing nervously, thinking they were smart. They crept along the street, careful not to be seen, and made their way toward Tanya's house. One of them peered through the bushes, checking for signs of movement. He saw the house was quiet, and assumed the woman inside was asleep or too scared to do anything. They didn't notice the faint glow of a light in the living room or the sharp, watchful eyes of Rex. The gang's plan was simple. They would get in, grab whatever they could find, and leave before anyone noticed. They had done it before in other neighborhoods, and it had always worked. They were confident, too confident. They didn't expect resistance. They didn't expect a dog like Rex. They didn't expect a woman like Tanya. Tanya's evening continued quietly. She didn't notice anything unusual at first. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw a shadow move across the garden. Rex growled softly, low and warning. Tanya froze for a moment, her heart rate quickening. She knew that sound. She had heard it before when Rex sensed danger. She set down her book and stood up, looking toward the window. The shadow moved again, closer to the side door. Rex's growl grew louder. Tanya felt a mix of fear and determination. She was not going to let anyone harm her or her home. She quietly moved to the bedroom where she kept her phone, ready to call for help if needed. She spoke softly to Rex. "Stay calm. Stay ready." The dog understood immediately, his tail stiff, his body tense and prepared to protect her. The gang finally reached the side door. One of them tried the handle. It was unlocked just as they had hoped. They pushed it open slowly, trying to be quiet. They didn't expect to hear the low growl that came from the living room. Rex had moved closer to the door without making a sound, waiting. The first intruder stepped in and Rex lunged. The dog's teeth sank into the man's arm. He yelled in pain and tried to shake Rex off, but the dog held firm. The other gang members froze, stunned. They had never dealt with a dog like this before. Tanya, heart pounding, picked up her phone and dialed 911, whispering to keep her voice calm. The intruder with Rex biting him struggled and yelled, creating chaos inside the house. Tanya stayed quiet but alert, moving carefully to keep herself safe. The gang panicked. They had thought it would be easy. They had thought this house would be like the others. But they were wrong. Tanya's calm and steady presence combined with Rex's fierce loyalty was more than they could handle. They realized too late that their assumptions about the woman and her home were completely wrong. As they tried to retreat, Rex chased them a few steps, barking fiercely. The first intruder finally freed himself and ran toward the back gate. The others followed, stumbling over garden furniture and bushes. Tanya watched silently, clutching her phone. She felt a surge of pride and relief. Her instincts had been right, and Rex had protected her as he always did. The sirens in the distance grew louder. Tanya knew help was on the way. She stayed in the bedroom, holding Rex close, feeling the warmth and strength of her companion. She knew that the night had been dangerous, but she also knew that she and Rex had faced it together, and won. The street outside was quiet again, except for the fading sounds of the gang running away. Tanya took a deep breath and whispered to Rex, "You did it, boy. You kept us safe." Rex wagged his tail, his eyes alert but calm, as if he understood exactly what she meant. That night, Tanya realized something important. Courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about being ready, staying calm, and trusting those who stood by you. Rex had done his part, and she had done hers. Together, they were strong. And the neighborhood, even if it didn't know it yet, had a new story about bravery and loyalty that would spread for years. The night felt heavier now. Tanya's heart was still racing from the earlier sounds outside, and Rex's low growl reminded her that the danger was not over. She knew the gang might try again, or worse, they might have already entered the house. She stayed close to Rex, her hand gently stroking his back. His warm body pressed against her, giving her both comfort and courage. Tanya realized that in moments like this, fear could paralyze, but calmness could protect. She needed to think clearly. Outside, the gang had regrouped briefly in the shadows near the side of the house. They whispered to each other, anger and frustration in their voices. One of them had been bitten and his arm was bleeding. Their confidence had vanished. They had thought this would be easy, but the growl of a dog and the quiet strength of a woman had shaken them more than they expected. One of the men suggested trying the back door. They assumed no one would expect them there. They moved cautiously, stepping over fallen leaves and garden rocks, trying to stay silent, but each movement made Tanya more alert. Inside, Tanya had moved to the bedroom window. She could see the faint movement of shadows near the back of the house. She knew she had only a few seconds to decide what to do. Her phone was in her hand, still connected to the police. She whispered softly to Rex, "Stay ready. Don't let them get in." The dog's eyes met hers, full of understanding, and he shifted closer to the bedroom door. Every muscle in his body was tense, prepared to defend. The gang finally reached the back door. One of the men tried the handle. It was locked. Tanya felt a wave of relief, but she knew that might not be enough to stop them. They were desperate and reckless. One of the men kicked the door, testing its strength. Tanya could hear the sound reverberate through the quiet house. Rex growled again, louder this time, warning the intruders that their plan would not succeed. Suddenly, one of the men pulled out a crowbar. Tanya's stomach sank. She knew this could get dangerous quickly. She didn't panic, though. Instead, she quietly scanned the room for anything that could help her. Her eyes landed on the baseball bat she kept near the window for emergencies. It wasn't for attacking, she told herself, but for protection if needed. She gripped it tightly, feeling its weight, and whispered to Rex, "Stay close. Be ready." The dog pressed closer, almost as if he understood the seriousness of the situation more than she did. The men managed to force the door open slightly. Tanya could see their shadows moving through the gap. She stayed calm and waited, listening to every creak of the floorboards and every whisper of the wind. Rex barked sharply, a sound that echoed through the house. The intruders froze. They had not expected the dog to be so alert, to react so quickly. Panic began to take hold again. One of the men tried to push past Rex, thinking they could scare him off. But Rex did not move. He lunged, snapping his teeth, and the man stumbled backward, hitting the wall. Tanya felt a mix of fear and relief. The situation was dangerous, but her careful planning and Rex's instincts had created a strong defense. She spoke softly, almost to herself. "It's okay, we can handle this. Stay calm, stay smart." She realized that the key to survival wasn't brute force. It was patience, awareness, and courage. She could hear the intruders arguing in low tones, their plan falling apart as they faced unexpected resistance. One of the men shouted something in frustration, and that gave Tanya an idea. She quietly moved to the hall, staying out of sight, and looked for a way to guide Rex if the men got closer. She had trained him to follow her commands in emergencies, and she trusted him completely. "Rex, stay," she whispered, and the dog remained perfectly still, his eyes locked on the door. Tanya's heart pounded, but she didn't let fear take over. Every second mattered, and she knew the police were on their way. The intruders finally realized that they could not get inside without serious injury. One of them yelled, "Forget it! She's crazy. The dog is insane." Their voices were filled with panic, not anger. They tried to retreat, but their movements were clumsy in the dark. Rex barked again, and the man who had been bitten earlier screamed in pain. Tanya could hear the commotion and knew this was her chance to stay safe and alert the authorities. She kept the phone pressed to her ear, describing everything she could to the dispatcher. Meanwhile, the gang tried to escape through the backyard, but they didn't notice how tricky the terrain was. Fallen branches, uneven ground, and shrubs made it difficult for them to move quickly. Rex, staying near the back door, growled and barked, keeping them from advancing further. Tanya stayed in the bedroom, watching the shadows and listening carefully. She knew that if she made one wrong move, the situation could turn dangerous, but she trusted her instincts and Rex's loyalty completely. One of the men tripped over a garden hose and fell to the ground. Another tried to help him, but Rex lunged forward, barking ferociously. The sounds of struggle echoed into the night, and Tanya felt a mix of fear and relief. The intruders were not used to resistance like this, and every mistake they made was a small victory for her. She whispered softly to Rex, "Good boy. Keep them back. Stay safe." The dog obeyed, standing his ground, his body tense and alert. The police sirens grew louder, and Tanya could see the flashing lights through the trees. She knew they were close. The gang panicked completely, realizing that help had arrived. They tried to climb over the fence, dragging the injured man with them, but they were uncoordinated and clumsy. Rex chased after them a few steps, barking and growling, making sure they couldn't get away easily. Tanya stayed quiet, letting the authorities handle the rest. After a few minutes, the chaos settled. The intruders had fled as best as they could, and Tanya knew the police would be there any moment. She sat on the edge of the bed, holding Rex close, feeling the warmth and strength of her companion. She realized that courage wasn't about fighting blindly. It was about staying calm, thinking clearly, and trusting those who were loyal to you. Rex had done his part, and she had done hers. Together, they had faced a dangerous situation and survived. Tanya could hear the officers calling out as they arrived, checking the yard and surrounding areas. She described the intruders carefully, giving details about their appearance and the injuries caused by Rex. The officers listened intently, impressed by her composure. They praised her for staying calm and protecting herself. Tanya smiled weakly, brushing Rex's head. "He's the real hero," she said softly. The dog wagged his tail, proud but calm, as if he understood the compliment. The neighbors began to peek out of their houses, curious about the commotion. Tanya reassured them from the window, telling them she was safe. They were amazed by the bravery of both Tanya and Rex. They realized that sometimes what seems quiet and ordinary on the surface hides courage and strength. Tanya's house, once just another home on the street, had become a symbol of vigilance and loyalty. As the night continued, Tanya reflected on what had happened. She knew that she had been lucky, but she also knew that her careful thinking and Rex's instincts had made a huge difference. She resolved to remain cautious, to stay alert, and to continue living her life with care and awareness. The bond between her and Rex felt stronger than ever. They had faced real danger together and had come out safe. By the time everything settled, Tanya felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. She walked Rex around the house, checking the doors and windows. Everything was secure now. She sat down on the porch, feeling the cool night air, and let Rex rest beside her. She knew that life could throw unexpected challenges at anyone, but she also knew that courage, loyalty, and calm thinking could make all the difference. That night, Tanya and Rex proved that strength doesn't always come from size or power. Sometimes it comes from courage, careful thinking, and unwavering loyalty. The night was tense, but now it was no longer just about defense inside the house. The gang had fled the backyard after Rex's fierce reaction and were stumbling down the street, scrambling over fences and shrubs in the dark. Their movements were chaotic, unplanned, and desperate. They had never expected such resistance. They had assumed Tanya's house would be like any other easy target, quiet, empty, and unprotected. But they had underestimated her courage and the loyalty of Rex. Now, in their panic, they were completely exposed. Tanya watched from her bedroom window, feeling a mix of adrenaline and relief. She knew she could not go outside yet. The police were on their way, and she needed to stay safe until they arrived. But she could see the gang clearly enough to understand their direction. One of them, the man who had been bitten by Rex, was limping badly, trying to keep up with the others. Tanya's heart went out to him, not in sympathy for his crime, but in the way she always felt when she saw pain. She knew that chaos and poor choices often led to injury. Her mind raced, considering how the events might unfold, and how she could provide clear information to the authorities. Rex, ever vigilant, pressed close to her side, his ears perked and eyes alert. Tanya gently ran her fingers along his fur, whispering, "Good boy, keep them in sight." The dog seemed to understand perfectly. He pressed his nose to the window, watching the fleeing gang, ready to react if needed. Tanya felt a surge of gratitude for his presence. She had lived alone for years, but with Rex she never felt truly alone. He was not just a dog. He was her partner, her protector, her loyal friend. The intruders were now running into the neighboring street, clearly panicked. They stumbled over trash bins, fences, and uneven ground. One of them shouted, frustrated and terrified, blaming the others for their failures. Their voices carried through the night, echoing against the houses. Tanya could hear them clearly, and she relayed every detail to the police, describing their numbers, their clothes, and even the way they moved. Her calm reporting contrasted sharply with the chaos outside. Rex, sensing the tension and the danger, let out low growls, keeping the gang aware that they were being observed. The dog was fast, much faster than the intruders realized, and he kept pace with them for a short distance, barking sharply whenever they slowed or stumbled. Tanya felt a mixture of pride and relief. She knew Rex was doing exactly what he was trained to do, protect her home and make sure no one got away without consequences. The loyalty and courage he displayed filled her with a quiet sense of wonder. By now, the police sirens were growing louder. Tanya could see the flashing lights reflecting off the windows and walls of the houses nearby. Officers began to arrive on the street, calling out for the suspects to stop and show their hands. Tanya could feel the tension in the air shift slightly. The gang, already panicked, now faced real authority. Their earlier confidence was gone. They realized that their actions had consequences far beyond what they had imagined. One of the gang members, the one limping from Rex's bite, tried to hide behind a tree. The other three scrambled to figure out what to do. They had no plan, no exit strategy. Panic had taken control, and fear guided their movements. They ran blindly down alleys, tripped over fences, and ran into dead ends. Tanya's eyes never left them, and she could see the panic etched into their faces. Every stumble, every misstep made it clear that their night of crime was ending badly. The officers split up, moving carefully but quickly, calling for backup. Tanya could hear them giving instructions and trying to corner the gang.
She stayed by the window, whispering to Rex, "Stay calm."
Let them do their job. The dog wagged his tail slightly but remained alert, ready to intervene if the men tried to double back toward the house. Tanya felt a strange sense of calm amidst the chaos, the combination of her careful observation, Rex's vigilance, and the arrival of the authorities created a sense of order from the disorder outside. As the gang ran, one of the intruders tripped on a broken fence post and fell hard. His friends shouted at him, trying to help, but they were clumsy and uncoordinated. Rex, still visible from the window, barked sharply, making the moment even more chaotic for the men. Tanya felt a twinge of satisfaction, not in cruelty but in knowing that justice, in its own way, was beginning to unfold. The intruders had thought they could get away with their crime, but their mistakes, fear, and misjudgment were catching up to them. The police officers moved closer, coordinating with flashlights and radios. Tanya could see them blocking the streets, guiding the intruders toward corners where escape would be impossible. The gang, disoriented and exhausted, had no choice but to slow down. They realized they could no longer run freely. Tanya's description over the phone, combined with the officer's quick response, was making the difference. One of the intruders, finally understanding that there was no way out, dropped his weapon, a small crowbar he had carried for intimidation. He raised his hands, shouting at the others to do the same. The police moved in carefully, but with confidence. Tanya felt a sense of relief wash over her. The danger was nearly over. The bravery she and Rex had shown inside the house had created the conditions for the intruder's capture outside. Meanwhile, Rex remained at the window, observing the gang until they were fully in police custody. Tanya reached out and patted his head gently, whispering, "We did it, boy. We made sure no one got away." Rex wagged his tail slowly, his eyes calm but alert. Tanya knew he understood. He had done his job perfectly, and together they had turned a dangerous night into a story of courage and loyalty. The intruders were finally arrested. Tanya could see them being led away in handcuffs, their expressions a mix of fear, shame, and disbelief. They had underestimated her, underestimated Rex, and underestimated the power of calm thinking in the face of danger. Tanya felt a quiet sense of triumph. She hadn't fought violently, she hadn't taken unnecessary risks, but she had stayed alert, made careful decisions, and trusted Rex's instincts. That combination had protected her home and ensured justice was served. Neighbors began to emerge cautiously, checking that everything was all right. Tanya reassured them from her window, explaining that she and Rex were safe. The officers thanked her for her cooperation and bravery. Tanya smiled weakly but genuinely, her mind still processing the intensity of the night. She realized that courage often showed itself not in grand gestures but in quiet, careful action paired with trust in those who are loyal. As the police wrapped up their investigation, Tanya finally allowed herself to breathe. The night that had begun with fear and uncertainty had ended with safety and order. She walked through her home, checking the doors and windows, making sure everything was secure. Rex followed closely, calm now but still watchful. Tanya realized that their bond had deepened through the events of the night. They had faced real danger together, and they had emerged stronger for it. The streets slowly returned to their usual quietness. Tanya stepped outside briefly, letting Rex sniff around the garden. The cool night air was calming, and she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known she needed. She looked at Rex, feeling gratitude for his presence. He had been her protector, her companion, and her hero. Tanya understood that bravery was not about facing danger blindly. It was about staying alert, thinking clearly, and trusting those who stood beside you. That night, Tanya knew something important. The world could be unpredictable, and danger could appear when least expected. But with calm thinking, courage, and loyal companions, even the scariest situations could be handled. Rex had proven that loyalty was a force stronger than fear, and Tanya had proven that courage could be quiet, thoughtful, and unshakable. Together they had turned what could have been a tragedy into a story of triumph, bravery, and unwavering loyalty. By the time Tanya finally went to bed, the adrenaline had faded, leaving her exhausted but proud. Rex curled up beside her, his presence a comforting reminder of the night's events. Tanya closed her eyes, reflecting on what had happened. She knew that life would continue, and challenges would arise again, but she also knew she was ready. That night had tested her in ways she could never have imagined, but she had passed the test with courage, calmness, and loyalty. And in her heart, she knew that with Rex by her side, she could face anything. The morning after the night's chaos felt surprisingly calm. The street was quiet again, almost as if nothing had happened. Birds chirped softly, and the sun cast a warm light over the neighborhood. Tanya stepped outside with Rex, taking a deep breath of the crisp morning air. The events of the night were still fresh in her mind, and she felt a mix of exhaustion, relief, and pride. Rex walked closely beside her, his leash loose but his eyes alert. He had been her protector through the ordeal, and she felt gratitude and love for him more strongly than ever. Neighbors began to peek from behind curtains or step cautiously onto their porches. Whispers and hushed conversations passed between them. Tanya could hear snippets of what people were saying. How brave she had been, how fierce Rex was, how the gang had clearly underestimated her. Some neighbors walked over, cautiously at first, then with more confidence as they saw she was safe. They brought small gestures of comfort, cups of coffee, homemade snacks, and words of support. Tanya smiled, her heart warming at their kindness. Despite the fear and danger of last night, the sense of community now felt stronger than ever. Police officers were still around, taking final notes and confirming details of the arrest. Tanya spoke calmly and clearly to each officer. recounting the events as they had unfolded. She described how the gang had tried to break in, how Rex had defended her, and how she had called for help. Every officer seemed impressed, not just with her bravery, but with the way she had remained calm under pressure. Tanya didn't see herself as a hero. She simply felt that she had done what she had to do to protect her home, her life, and her loyal companion. But others saw her courage as extraordinary, and their admiration added a quiet satisfaction to her morning. As the news spread, a local reporter arrived, curious about the story. Tanya agreed to speak briefly, her voice steady but gentle. She focused on Rex's role, emphasizing how loyalty and trust had made all the difference. The reporter listened intently, taking notes, and later published a story highlighting Tanya and Rex as examples of bravery and vigilance. Tanya didn't seek attention, but she recognized that sharing her experience could help others understand the importance of being prepared and staying calm during danger. The community's reaction was immediate. Messages of support came from neighbors and even from people in nearby areas. Tanya received calls and texts praising her composure and Rex's loyalty. People were inspired by the story, and some even mentioned feeling safer knowing that courage and care could make such a big difference. Tanya appreciated the support, but she remained humble. She knew that fear could have been overwhelming, that a moment's hesitation might have changed everything. She thought about how lucky she had been, how precise Rex's instincts were, and how her calm thinking had prevented a disaster. Over the next few days, Tanya and Rex settled back into their routine, though the memory of the night lingered. She walked Rex each morning, paying attention to every sound and shadow, but now with a sense of confidence rather than fear. She had faced danger head-on and survived. Each step reminded her of the bond she shared with Rex. It was more than companionship. It was trust and understanding. Rex knew her moods, her concerns, and her instincts. Tanya knew he would always be ready to protect her, and that knowledge brought peace she could hardly describe. The gang members faced their legal consequences swiftly. Tanya was called to testify in court, providing a clear and detailed account of the events. She described the fear, the sound of Rex's growls, and the way the intruders had panicked and fled. Her testimony was precise and calm, demonstrating her ability to stay composed even under extreme stress. The judge and jury listened carefully, and the evidence was undeniable. The gang's reckless, racist assumptions had led to their failure, and the court made it clear that such actions would not be tolerated. Justice was served, and Tanya's careful actions had ensured that. Neighbors began to share stories about the night. Some had witnessed shadows moving across Tanya's yard or heard Rex barking fiercely. Others had seen the gang running down the street, panicked and disorganized. These shared experiences strengthened the sense of community. People spoke of Tanya and Rex with admiration, not just for the physical bravery, but for the calm, thoughtful courage that had guided their actions. The story became a lesson for everyone. Courage isn't always loud or violent. It can be quiet, careful, and determined. Tanya also reflected on the nature of fear and assumptions. The gang had judged her based on her appearance, assuming she would be easy to intimidate. They had no idea about her inner strength or the loyalty of her dog. This realization gave Tanya a sense of empowerment. She understood that strength often lies beneath the surface, in ways that cannot be easily measured or predicted. Her experience became a reminder that courage, intelligence, and preparation could overcome ignorance and prejudice. Rex, now slightly older but still alert, became a local hero. Children in the neighborhood would wave to him during walks, and adults would nod in respect when they saw him. Tanya felt a sense of pride in their shared accomplishment, but also humility. Rex had acted out of instinct and loyalty, while she had acted out of careful observation and calm thinking. Together they had faced danger, protected their home, and ensured justice. The bond between them had deepened in ways that Tanya would never forget. In the following weeks, Tanya took steps to improve her home's security further, but she did so with a sense of calm rather than fear. She installed extra locks, motion sensor lights, and a small camera system, not to live in worry but to feel prepared. Rex continued his daily patrols around the house, alert and watchful, but the tension had eased. Tanya felt confident in their ability to handle whatever challenges might come next. The events of the night had taught her that preparation, awareness, and loyalty were as important as courage and strength. The story of Tanya and Rex spread beyond the neighborhood. Local social media pages highlighted their bravery, emphasizing the lessons of loyalty, calmness, and courage in the face of danger. Tanya received messages from people inspired by her actions. Some shared their own experiences, thanking her for showing that bravery is not always about fighting. It can be about staying composed, making smart decisions, and trusting those who are loyal. Tanya was touched by the support, but she remained humble. She knew that anyone in her position could have acted similarly, but the combination of calm thinking and Rex's loyalty had made the night unforgettable. The neighborhood itself seemed changed after the incident. People spoke more openly with one another, checking in and offering support. The shared experience of danger, followed by relief, had created stronger bonds. Tanya noticed neighbors helping each other with small tasks, watching out for one another and expressing gratitude more freely. Rex became a symbol of vigilance, loyalty, and courage. Tanya felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that their actions had not only protected her home but also strengthened the community. Tanya often reflected on the lessons from that night. Courage was not about being fearless. It was about understanding the situation, staying calm, and making careful choices. Loyalty and trust exemplified by Rex could be more powerful than fear or force, and prejudice and ignorance, as shown by the gang's assumptions, could never overcome careful preparation and inner strength. These reflections gave Tanya a sense of clarity and purpose. She knew that she could face challenges in the future with calmness and confidence, relying on her instincts, her careful thinking, and Rex's unwavering loyalty. Even as life returned to its normal rhythm, Tanya and Rex remained a story in the neighborhood. People would talk about the night when bravery and loyalty overcame fear and ignorance. Children would watch Rex and learn about trust and responsibility. Adults would share the story as a reminder that courage comes in many forms, and that careful thinking and loyalty can triumph over recklessness and prejudice. Tanya felt proud, not because she wanted recognition, but because she understood the value of her actions and the lessons they carried. In the quiet moments, Tanya would sit on her porch, Rex by her side, reflecting on how quickly life could change. One moment everything seemed ordinary, and the next danger had arrived. Yet, she also realized that preparedness, calm thinking, and trust in loyal companions could make all the difference. She had faced a real threat and come out safe, and that knowledge gave her a sense of empowerment she had never felt before. Rex would nuzzle her hand and she would smile, knowing they had done it together. By the end of the week, Tanya had regained a sense of normalcy, though the memory of the night remained vivid. She continued her walks, her routines, and her quiet evenings, but now with a renewed sense of strength and awareness. The events had changed her, but in a way that empowered rather than frightened. She knew that courage could be quiet, loyalty could be fierce, and that preparation and calm thinking could turn a frightening night into a story of triumph. Tanya often thought about how fear could overwhelm anyone, but calmness, courage, and loyalty could make a difference. That night had shown her the power of these qualities, and she resolved to carry those lessons forward. She knew that life could be unpredictable, but she felt ready for whatever might come, and with Rex by her side, she knew that together, they could face anything, protect what mattered most, and inspire those around them with their quiet courage and unwavering loyalty. Days passed, and life slowly began to return to normal for Tanya. The street was calm again, with children playing and neighbors greeting each other warmly. Yet the memory of that frightening night remained vivid in her mind. It wasn't just fear that stayed. It was also the realization of how courage, loyalty, and quick thinking had changed everything. Tanya often thought about the chain of events that had unfolded and how it had revealed both the danger in the world and the strength within herself. Rex, as always, stayed by her side. The bond between them had grown stronger than ever. Every morning, Tanya would wake and see him lying at the foot of her bed, ears alert, watching for any sign of danger. Even though the immediate threat was gone, Rex's instincts hadn't dulled, and Tanya felt comforted knowing he was always ready. Their relationship went beyond companionship. It was a deep, unspoken understanding. Tanya could sense what Rex needed, and he could sense her emotions. Together they had faced real danger, and together they had come out stronger. The community's response had been overwhelming. People stopped by to check on her, offering food, gifts, and kind words. Some were curious to see Rex up close, amazed by his intelligence, strength, and loyalty. Others wanted to learn from Tanya, how she had stayed calm, how she had guided Rex, and how she had ensured her own safety without panicking. Tanya shared her experience openly, hoping to inspire others to think clearly and act wisely in difficult situations. She emphasized that courage was not about being fearless, but about staying alert, making thoughtful decisions, and trusting those who were loyal. The gang members had been arrested and were facing legal consequences. Tanya was called to court several times to give her testimony. Each time she spoke with clarity and calmness, describing how the events had unfolded and how Rex had defended the home. Her words were precise and she never exaggerated. The judge and jury listened carefully, impressed not only by her bravery but also by her composure. Her testimony helped ensure that justice was served. The gang's assumptions about her based on race, gender, and appearance had led to their downfall, and Tanya's careful planning and Rex's instincts had made that clear. Even as the legal process continued, Tanya and Rex returned to their routines. She walked him each morning, watched the sunrise from her porch, and enjoyed quiet evenings with a cup of tea. But the experience had left a lasting impression. Tanya was more aware of her surroundings, more prepared for emergencies, and more confident in her own strength. She realized that courage was not something you always discovered in extraordinary circumstances. It could be found in ordinary moments when you made thoughtful choices and stayed calm under pressure. Rex became something of a local hero. Children would run to the fence to greet him during walks, and adults would nod respectfully when they saw him. People spoke about the night of the break-in with admiration, not just for Tanya's bravery, but for the loyalty and intelligence of Rex. He had protected his home and his companion in a way that went beyond instinct. He had been part of a partnership, working in harmony with Tanya to ensure their safety. Tanya felt proud but never boastful. She knew that it was the combination of their trust, understanding, and quick thinking that had made all the difference. The events of that night also taught Tanya important lessons about assumptions and prejudice. The gang had assumed she would be an easy target because of her appearance and the fact that she lived alone. They had no idea about her inner strength, her calm thinking, or the fierce loyalty of Rex. Their assumptions had blinded them, and they had paid the price. Tanya reflected on how often people underestimate others based on superficial judgments, and realized that true strength often lies hidden beneath the surface. She hoped that sharing her story would inspire others to recognize and respect strength, courage, and loyalty wherever they found it. Tanya also thought about fear. She had felt it during the night, but she had never let it control her. Fear was natural, she realized, but it was how you responded to it that mattered. By staying calm, making careful decisions, and relying on Rex's instincts, she had turned a dangerous situation into a manageable one. Courage, she now understood, was not the absence of fear. It was the ability to act wisely despite it. This insight stayed with her long after the police had left and the neighborhood had returned to normal. The neighborhood itself had changed in subtle ways. People were more attentive to one another, checking in and offering help without waiting for emergencies. The story of Tanya and Rex spread beyond her street, inspiring others to think about how they might respond in challenging situations. Tanya noticed neighbors helping each other more often, sharing advice about safety, and expressing gratitude for the small acts of vigilance that kept the community safe. It was a reminder that courage and loyalty could have ripple effects, creating a safer, more connected environment for everyone. Tanya often reflected on her own growth. She had discovered inner strength she hadn't fully appreciated before. The experience had tested her, forced her to make decisions under pressure, and shown her the value of trust and loyalty. Rex had been by her side every step of the way, reminding her that courage is not just about human action. It can also be about the bonds we share with those we trust and love. She felt a profound appreciation for the loyalty and companionship Rex offered every day.